Okay, on your graph exam, we're going to have this as page 1. So the first thing we have is the production possibilities curve with 3 points and 3 keys. So the production possibility curve would bow outward with the law of increasing opportunity cost. So anytime we have a point located inside the curve, that's going to make us inefficient. Any point on the curve is going to be efficient. Any point outside the curve is going to be unattainable. So that means we don't have the resources or the people or the technology to get there. So those are our 3 points: inside, efficient, and unattainable. So this curve represents the potential GDP we could be making if we have our 3 keys. And our 3 keys are full employment. That means all the people that want jobs have jobs and they're doing well at those jobs. We have full employment. Resources. That means the quality and quantity of our resources is as good as possibly could be. And of course our technology. So if we have people, resources, and technology doing the best of what they could do, then they would represent all possible production points that make up this curve and make us efficient. If we add to any of those, then we could have economic growth and push the curve outward. If any of these are taken away, then our curve would shift back to the left or inward. Now in the business cycle, we have our 3% GDP growth goal. Okay, you can associate that to long-run Phillips curve or to long-run aggregate supply curve. Now, the business cycle in the short runs gives us these ups and downs. We have our peak, and that's where we're going to have inflation because we're producing as well as we can. That's our temporary max in GDP. Now, as things start to slow down, we would have a recession. And if we recede enough, we'll go into a trough, and that's where we're going to have unemployment. Now, things get to be better. We'll have the business cycle in the short run going ups and down all the time. So when we're peaking, we have our inflation, we have our GDP. This is our long, steady climb. Okay, so this line right here represents 3% GDP growth while we have the same ups and downs throughout the year. So we have our peak, our trough, unemployment, inflation, GDP, recession. This area right here would be where we're having some expansion, and that gets us out of the trough. Okay? Another way we're going to show growth is with our long-run aggregate supply. So our long-run aggregate supply shows our potential GDP. Don't forget we have price level, we have YF, we have GDP. So anytime we show growth, we're going to have a shift to the right showing that we can make more GDP. So we'd have a new level while YF shifts to the right to a new level called Y1. Sorry, I'm writing in Sharpie so you can see it a little better, but it gets a little sloppy sometimes. So that's how we show economic growth, by shifting this to the right, more potential GDP. We also show economic growth by an outward shift to the PPC. Anytime we have more people, resources, or technology, we can show economic growth right there as well. Alright, now, matching our Phillips curve from earlier of equilibrium, we're going to have our aggregate supply and demand at long run or full employment equilibrium. So that means we're going to have all 3 of these crossing. Short run supply, aggregate demand, long run supply, all at full employment GDP, real GDP that is, and our economy where all 3 of those crossing is going to operate at a price level right in the middle of where all 3 of them are crossing. So make sure we had price level, real GDP, full employment, long run supply, aggregate demand, and short run supply to show us where we have equilibrium. Now this one's going to be in recession, where it's going to have a recessionary gap. So that means we're going to be operating at less than full employment equilibrium. So long run supply, we have our real GDP, our price level, and our full employment level of output. So in a recession, that means we're going to be operating to the left. So I'm going to have these short run supply and aggregate demand crossing at a point to the left where I have current price level and current output. So this right here is going to be what we call a recessionary gap. So where output is right here, we want it to be right here. So this gap is how much GDP we are missing to be at full employment equilibrium. So I can see right here that this recession matches this one. You can see unemployment increases to the right. Here, GDP is to the left of full employment. So those two match each other. So now we're looking at an economy with inflation. So we've labeled price level, GDP, full employment, long run supply. Now we need aggregate demand and short run supply. And these are actually going to cross to the right. So I'll have short run aggregate supply, and then aggregate demand is going to cross it over here. So that shows that we have expected inflation, we have overproduction, any of those things that can cause us to operate to the right of full employment GDP. So we have our price level. This is also called short run equilibrium. It's where the short run crosses aggregate demand. That's going to be to the right with this inflationary gap. So I can see here I have equilibrium, but prices or inflation is above equilibrium. So that's our inflation. That's also inflation right there. Now there's another video with the explanation of these three to go along with it.